Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to SCO's November webinar on our scholarships and contract seats. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. My name is Avery Cunningham. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions and Student Services here at SCO. I am one of the admissions team members who will be answering your admissions questions and participating in the admissions process. Before we get started, I ask that we all use proper Zoom etiquette by keeping microphones muted unless speaking, limiting background noise, and respecting all of this webinar's attendees and facilitators. We will have time for questions towards the end of the webinar, but in the meantime, if you do have any questions or concerns that need immediate attention, please use your chat feature at the bottom or the side of your screen to communicate with us. Today, Joseph Hauser, our VP of Student Services, will give a brief introduction to the scholarships and contract seats we offer here at SCO and how they are awarded to students. We'll also hear from a current student, hopefully, who was awarded a presidential scholarship to discuss her experience. That student is coming from clinic, so she may run a little late, but we'll hope and anticipate that she'll be joining us a little bit later. This webinar is being recorded and will be free and available to view starting next week on our website. And with that, Mr. Hauser, if you want to introduce yourself and go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you, Avery. Um, as VP for students here at SCO, I want to really stress that I and the college are very fortunate to have such great advocates like Avery Cunningham and Raquel Logan and Tara Panel, that as you develop questions throughout the pre or post application process, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I've said it so often, it sounds like a cliche. The only bad question is the one not asked. But this topic is near and dear to me because with the cost of education, tuition, living expenses, et cetera, the two ways to try to help offset the cost to you as the future student is through state contract seats and scholarships administered by SCO. So this is a topic that's near and dear to me, and I say we just jump in and get going. So as you can see on this first slide, as far as how the scholarships are based on, they're typically merit based. And we'll go over a little bit about the difference between being competitive for general admission. But as you can probably understand, being competitive for scholarship is just a little bit of a higher layer. And in fact, just to share with you, over the last couple of years, since our scholarships have grown so much, I've begun doing scholarship counseling with interested applicants that they take the OAT, and of course, based on their GPA, have questions about how competitive they are. And sometimes it's, well, you're very competitive for admission, but it might behoove you to retake the OAT to become competitive for scholarship, things along those lines. But along with academic achievement, GPA, OAT, service leadership, time management. Have you been involved with organizations on campus, leadership roles, maybe playing a collegiate sport, anything that shows dedication? And then commitment to optometry, working in the field, or shadowing extensively are all also sound aspects. We have two types, really three types of scholarships, two for entering. Institutional scholarships are scholarships based on the general scholarship fund that the college has and based on exemplary achievements. These are typically more merit-based. Our donor scholarships, we're very fortunate to have had many of our alumni and friends of SCO provide funds to Dallas scholarships. And sometimes an alum may want their scholarship, let's say, to go, I'm from Louisiana, so I want my scholarship to go to a Louisiana student, or I want my scholarship to be more on service leadership than academics. So sometimes our donor scholarships give us a little more flexibility with that. And then the last bullet there about donor established awards. An award is on your SCO track record, given to second, third, fourth years. So obviously entering scholarships are based upon your undergraduate record. But when you come to SCO or any optometry school, you're kind of starting off clean. So these awards, oftentimes ranging from $1,000 to $5,000, is a one-time award. It might be like the third year with showing excellence in clinic, or a fourth year demonstrating excellence in contact lens or ocular disease, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how these awards are typically determined. So for the class that just entered, the class of 2025 entering class, or now the graduating class of 2029, this is a breakdown of the scholarships that were awarded. About $850,000 awarded, with an average gift of about $10,000. Our ranges are basically 1,000 to 20,000. So as you can see on this little circle or wheel, there were 27 $1,000 to $4,000 a year gifts given, and 11 $20,000, and you kind of see the distribution below right there. So being competitive for scholarship is one thing, but then one step further is the distinction between competitive for something like a 20,000 versus a 1 to 4. And I think it's a little bit later in the slide, but one of the other criteria for this is that for the higher scholarships, are 20,000, 15, 10, and even 7, those are typically almost always going to go to our students from non-contract states, um, because the contract students is already getting a pretty decent reduction. We'll be talking about that in a future slide. But I'd just like to give that bearing. If you are from a contract state and receive a contract seat, does not disqualify you from scholarship. You might be typically more on the lower end, like the $1,000 or $4,000 a year scholarships. Um, but regardless, it typically does take like it might be in a later slide, but the average GPA OET is for general is about a 368, 369, 335. For scholarship, though, it's closer to a 385 and a 350. So just to kind of give you some bearing as to um, those are averages. You don't have to have those as minimums, but it gives you hopefully a better idea of how, if you're a little bit above average in admissions from an admission standpoint, you may still very well qualify for scholarship. But these are annual scholarships. That $20,000 scholarship is 80,000 over 4 years. It's almost half tuition, so it makes a very nice dent into your indebtedness. So from the process standpoint, your application for admission is your application for scholarship. You do not have to uh, submit an essay or declare that, hey, I'd like to apply for this one. We have this outrageous assumption that if offered, you'll take it. So therefore, it is not, there's really nothing you have to do, uh, except, again, in the application stage, either before you submit or after you submit, if you reach out to us to inquire about um, your competitiveness for scholarship, and sometimes it is like suggesting a retake of the OET or something like that. We'll certainly take that into consideration. As stated before, priority is given to, I use the term non-contract versus non-regional. It's the same nomenclature. So a student from Montana would have a little priority over a student from Mississippi, as far as that's concerned. Admissions decisions are made on a rolling basis. Right now, we're kind of, I wouldn't say we're late right now, but we're not early. And a good chunk of our scholarship dollars has already been awarded. So if you're wanting to be competitive for admission and scholarship, and consequently also um, um, for a contract seat in some states, like for example, Arkansas this year has already been filled. So we might get a great applicant tomorrow from Arkansas, but we don't have a contract to offer them. So rolling admission is important for general admission, but certainly for both scholarship and for contract seat. And you see the bullet before, a GPA of about a 3.8, 3.48. So certainly a little higher than the average GPA OET of the general class. So what are contract seats? The regional contract program, again, it's like a subsidy. The state provides us funding for a finite number of students, and it's passed through. So like if the uh, Like I mentioned, Arkansas earlier provides a little over $21,000. We get that funding and apply it to the student's account, for lack of better words, lowering tuition, which is currently 45,900. So after the application of a contract seat, their net tuition becomes about $24,000. So you are notified at admission if you're from a contract state, if you have secured a contract seat or not. But basically, because we're not an in-state school, like we don't have in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition. It's just tuition. But for select states and a select number from those states, and I think there's going to be a chart coming up as far as which states there are, we provide that number of students in each entering class a contract seat for the designated amount. So it's basically a pass through or a subsidy or an award. So contract seat eligibility must be a resident of the state. The state will, each state has a little bit of a different process as far as like in Georgia, a judge has to verify your residency. But basically, if you are from that state, your parents are from that state, a question sometimes comes up, if I'm from Georgia, but I go to school in Ohio, does that disqualify me? No, typically, if you leave a state to go to college, especially if your parents and family remain in that home state, you do not lose your residency. Each state, again, is different. It's their cause, their money. So therefore, but you have to be a resident of that state the year prior to applying. There are a few states, and we can point this out at admission, that require you or obligate you to return. Kansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana currently come to mind. And then the state scholarship with North Carolina does that. So these rules have evolved and changed over time. So 5 years from now, will these same states have the same process? We don't know, but we just want to bring this to your attention that some states do require that if you receive the contract seat, then you're obligated to return. For each year that you receive the funding is 1 year of practice obligation. And as I mentioned earlier, the amounts per state. A question that we sometimes will get, and I'd rather just share it up front because we're in Tennessee. Can I become a Tennessee resident for contract seat purposes after my first year? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. We mentioned earlier that you have to be a resident a year before. The state of Tennessee provides us a finite amount of funding. It's $1,019,000. We have 73 students in the program. If you divide 1,019,000 by 73, that's where you get the 14.3. If we allowed all 535 students in our program to become a Tennessee resident, that would lower the per student allocation to about $2,000 a student. I think you can understand objectively that the state of Tennessee probably wouldn't be very thrilled if we did that. Whereas for lack of better words, our born and raised Tennesseans are getting that diluted amount, and the same amount of students who move here. So you can move to Tennessee and become a resident, voters registration, car registration, etc., but not for contract seat eligibility. So we just want to be as upfront with that as possible, because that's a very commonly asked question. And then I mentioned about state-sponsored scholarships. These are similar to contracts, but they're scholarships, and also the fact that these states select the recipient. All of the other contract seats that we mentioned earlier, I failed to mention this, SCO determines who receives the Arkansas contract seat or the Louisiana or the Mississippi, etc. But for these state scholarships, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, the state determines the eligibility, or the recipient, I should say. And then we have on here Colorado, which is the Western states. It's a collaboration or collaborative various states, and they provide, one of the contract funding that we get is from the Southern Regional Education Board, or SREB, which is kind of like the South's version of WICHE. But some states, primarily Colorado, uh, if you're from that state and they do not fill all the contract seats with the Western optometry schools, they are amenable to transferring, for lack of better words. We have had some students from Colorado over the years obtain a WICHE seat for $19,700. So we put that on there if you are from Colorado. It's not a guarantee, but if Colorado does not fill its spots with the schools in California, etc., um, they are amenable to considering SCO students. So what's called like outside funding, federal and military scholarships certainly come to mind. Um, if you or your parent in particular, either from the post 911 GI Bill or veterans uh, VA benefits, our financial aid office is equipped to verify and work with you based sometimes with the VA benefit. It's a parent's benefit that they can pass on down to their child. But depending upon it's called a chapter with the VA, what chapter you or your parent served under determines eligibility. But we are at Southern College of Optometry is approved by the government to process and award veterans benefits if that's applicable to you and or your family. Military assistance, and really with the health profession student loan, I mean the military health profession student loans, whether it's for 4 years, they also have 3-year and 2-year scholarships commitment. For each year, the military, Army, Navy, Air Force pays your full tuition, living expenses, national boards, books, any ancillary fees, etc., health insurance, and again, living expenses for like rent and utilities for all 4 years or 3 years or 2 years. In turn, you owe that branch the 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year level of service. A similar program as far as the dollar allocation, the Indian Health Services or IHS scholarship program is available. I will say it has evolved a little bit, that we have had some students that were not Native American or Alaska Native that qualified for the Indian Health Service. It was more of like if you were willing to practice at a IHS facility, they were amenable to covering your tuition and fees. So IHS, the language is still there, that if you were to read it to say that this goes for qualified Native American or Alaska Native students, but we have seen firsthand where uh, non-Native American Alaska Native students qualified for this scholarship. So, but just like with the military, you're obligating 1 year of service for each year of funds at an Indian Health Service location, or for the military at a military branch.
So Trinity should be joining in a couple of minutes or so. So while we're waiting for her, how about we open it up to questions specifically for you, Mr. Hauser? So for all of
Sure.
our participants, if you have any questions specific to Mr. Hauser, and that's about scholarships, contract seats, or even more general admissions questions, then we'll be glad to answer those. Please feel free to use either the chat features. We have a Q&A feature and a general chat feature that you can access through either the top or the bottom of your screen. And any questions that are posted there, we'll be happy to read aloud and get answered for you. And while we're waiting on questions, any general advice to students, Mr. Hauser, who are interested in scholarships or who think they might be viable for scholarships?
Yeah, and contract seats too. I think um, it never hurts to reach out to the admissions team because, quite candidly, some states where contracts are more competitive than others, like based upon the number of seats they provide. And we can provide that nuanced information to you, especially in the pre-application cycle. So if you're looking to submit your application around July 1, let's say you're applying for next year's, the entering class of 2026 cycle, or I should let me entering class of 2027, that and you submit your application July of 2026. Before you do that, contacting us, maybe even come visit the school to talk a little bit about the state that you're from, how historically competitive those contract seats are. And then, especially if you take the OAT on the early side, it's kind of hard to counsel a student on competition for the OAT if you haven't taken the OAT. But once you take the OAT, maybe in the spring of your junior year, and then apply the next year, we're happy to counsel you on not only overall admission competitiveness, but how competitive are you for potential scholarship, and or is it possible a benefit of retaking the OET to try to improve that a little bit to make you more competitive for scholarship. But all of this centers around either you're submitting your application early or contacting us early so we can give you that feedback and advice.
Wonderful, thank you. And we do have a few questions. I'm starting off with a question from Kinley. Does Nebraska have any contract seats? And I do not believe that is the case, but any advice for a
They
Nebraska
they
student?
they used to. Kenley, I've been around long enough. About 15 years ago, Nebraska had to make a decision. They were pushing for an advanced scope within their field for therapeutics injections. And the compromise, the state passed the bill, but they had to sacrifice their state contract funding. That's why maybe your optometrist in Nebraska might have received one of those it was like 15 years ago, it was like $17,000 way back then. So it was a very lucrative, and I'd love for them to come back. But um, there isn't any, and SCO would welcome those contract seats back. But of course, we can't go to a legislator and say, you must do this again. So from Nebraska, there are no contracts, to my knowledge, with any of the optometry schools. But a Nebraska student would be a perfect example. Like one of our Nebraska students that's entering for the 2026 entering class has one of those $20,000 scholarships. Because they were set to pay full tuition and they were very competitive. So unfortunately, the contracts are gone with Nebraska, but the good side, at least with SCO, with our healthy scholarship endowment, you very well may qualify for a healthy scholarship.
Thank you. And then a question from Kirsten. Is there a way to be able to tell which states' contract seats have been filled and which states have not from a student's perspective?
Yes, and it depends upon timing. Like for example, for this current cycle, just by contacting the admissions office and letting us know what state that you're from, we could share with you um, um, what seats we have filled and what seats we have not. Now, please keep in mind, um, like I mentioned earlier, that we have filled Arkansas's already. Uh, but if one of those 5 students decides to go somewhere else or defer a year or something like that, that opens up a seat and we're going to award it. So we can tell you where we are. Unfortunately, we don't have the crystal ball to say with 100% certainty whether there will be additional seats or there will not be additional seats is based upon um, um, the the activity of those others accepted. But probably the best situation, if you're especially if you're looking at if you're applying for the current cycle, would just be to contact myself or Ms. Cunningham and let us know what state you're from or inquiring about, and we can kind of walk you through whether or not we still have seats available or if we do not.
Wonderful, thank you. And Trinity was able to join us. Yay, thank you,
Great.
Trinity. So, what we're going to do is we're going to get to everyone else's questions, but we're going to just pause them for a little bit. And we're going to hear from Trinity a little about her experience receiving scholarships, and then we'll circle on back and complete any outstanding questions that we have in the chat and any new ones that pop up as well. So, everyone, please continue to put your questions in the chat. I promise that we will get back to them. Alrighty, so starting off, hello, Trinity. Thank you so much for joining us. So as someone who has been a recipient of the Presidential Endowed Scholarship, we feel that it would just be a great opportunity for incoming students to hear about your experience and kind of how you view your scholarship process impacting your decision to attend SCO or your overall experience here at SCO. So if you want to start off kind of just introducing yourself and talking about how you became interested in optometry and what ultimately, drew you to SCO. Oh, you may be muted, Trinity. Oh dear, we might have lost her again. Live television, everyone. And she's back. Trinity, if you can hear me, give a hey, howdy do.
Hey, howdy do.
Yay, thank you.
Can you
Thank
hear me
you.
okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Awesome. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you. I couldn't
Okay,
hear anything
wonderful.
before when I had joined, so I don't have any clue what's going on, but I'm here now.
No,
I just moved to my
you're
phone.
here right on time. You are right on time. So we're just kind of opening up to some questions for you about your experience. So if you want to start off kind of just introducing yourself, where you're from, how you became interested in optometry, and then what drew you to SCO.
So I'm Trinity. I'm originally from Georgia. I am a second year now at SCO. I went to the University of Georgia and I got my bachelor's in biology. Um, During that time, I was doing a lot of shadowing between different healthcare fields. From since I was younger, I was in the dentist, at my PCP, at my optometry office, and I always felt like there was so much compassion in the field. And it always just felt really nice to leave and know that somebody was on my side and somebody wanted to help me. It wasn't until I got to college where I was like, okay, it's time for me to kind of solidify what I want to do. And so through different shadowing experiences, work experiences, I decided on optometry. And that was just because I got to see that relationship that my doctor was building with each of his patients, but I also got to see how he still got to show his compassion and then keep his personal hobbies as well. So even even outside of work, he was still able to do all his traveling or still complete all his hobbies. Specifically for me being drawn to SEO, I I took a gap year after I graduated from UGA, and I decided to move to Minnesota and work at Mayo Clinic, and that was a big change for me. I had never been far away from my family at all. I'd never been far away from my friends, and although it was a great learning opportunity, it helped me kind of narrow down. Okay, I can't be anywhere where I can't get home in less than half a day by driving. So I knew that I wanted to kind of stay in the South area, anywhere where I could drive and probably be 8 hours from home. Um, and so then my next thing was looking at the facts that laid out. So looking at board passage rate, looking at class sizes, looking at tuition. And so that helped me narrow it down a little bit more. And then lastly, my thing was going on campus and actually experiencing the atmosphere of the students and the faculty, the staff, the doctors. And when I stepped onto SEO's campus and I did my tour, I automatically knew that this was my new, I guess I could say home. Everybody was so welcoming. The environment just felt like everybody was here for the right reasons. Everybody loved optometry, and everybody just wanted everybody to do well. It wasn't like any competition based. Everybody was rooting for somebody else. And so I think that a big thing for me as well was when I did my tour of the clinic. Um, Memphis is a very diverse population, and so something that stood out to me was being able to see a diverse population before graduating, being able to see lots of diseases, lots of different things that would prepare me for when I get out and start practicing optometry.
Excellent, thank you. And when in the application process did you start researching scholarships and financial aid, if that was part of kind of your application journey?
Yeah, so I started in August. Yes, August before I applied. It wasn't like a full-on search, I guess I would say. It was more so like me just every now and then going on Google, looking at different tuitions, looking at different scholarships, just seeing how I could kind of pay my way through optometry school. And so that was something that deterred me from applying earlier, because I was like, maybe I should take another gap year and save up more money so that I don't have to worry about taking out a certain amount of loans. And that is something that I kind of regret in my decision. I wish I would have applied a little bit earlier on, as well as like really looked into financial aid and scholarships.
Great, thank you. And then how helpful do you feel SEO was regarding financial aid and scholarships throughout the application process?
SCO was so helpful. When I went through UGA, I didn't have to take out any loans. So kind of like learning about different loans, understanding how they work, I was so confused. And so I also haven't really had to like budget specifically, okay, this amount of money is going to this, this is going to this. And so I was able to get a meeting prior to coming to school with Miss Branch, and she was very helpful. And this is the amount of loan money you can take out. This is what this loan means. This is what this loan means. And then this is how scholarships could help you if you do receive any scholarships. And so she basically guided me through kind of like every step of the way, making sure that I was getting everything done on time. I also think that SEO's website is really helpful, so that played a big role for both me and my parents, like sitting down together and looking at the deadline and how things kind of work with that. I will say, even before, they were very helpful, but like even being here, like I've still met with them and like been in the office and been like, okay, this year I want to move a loan. How can I kind of work with my scholarships and my budget into making sure that that could happen? And so I still see them pretty often.
Thank you. And then how did receiving a scholarship impact your optometry school education overall thus far?
So like I said, I kind of waited on applying just because of my concern for not wanting to take out a lot of loans and being concerned about figuring out how much money to save up so that I can go to optometry school. I hadn't taken out any loans, and I was kind of worried about like, oh, you're going to be in a lot of debt. That's what I kept hearing. And so I think that with the scholarship, it kind of took some of that stress off of my shoulders. Optometry school is already, pretty hard. It's probably not going to be like anything you've done before. And so if you're having the stress of, I have a practical today, I have a test tomorrow, like it's just a lot. And if you're thinking about that financial concern in the back of your mind, that's even more stress. And so for me, that weight was kind of lifted off my shoulders. It has like helped me go to certain conferences, and at those conferences I've been able to receive more travel grants and more scholarships. And so overall it's just been pretty helpful throughout my time at SCO.
Thank you. Thank you. And then my last question, what advice or recommendations would you give to students researching scholarships or financial resources for optometry school? I know you mentioned about the choice whether or not to apply later or apply earlier because of financial concerns, but any other advice from your experience around financial aid or scholarships?
So, like I said, SEO does a great job at like they have a lot of scholarships, and so that applying early is pretty important. But I would also say using your outside resources. So for me, I know that like VSP will have different scholarships. So like AOA on their website, they'll have different scholarships. And it'll be like calling all second year optometry students. Here's, $1,000, or calling all third years. Here's like $15,000. So just being mindful of like while being in optometry school, still looking for those scholarship opportunities. Um, and I feel like a big thing is like some people are afraid to, ask financial aid, like for help, ask them on guidance about, what they should do in certain situations. And the financial aid office and everybody else at SCO wants you to succeed and wants things to work out for you. So I just feel like I would recommend like asking questions. If you are confused on any part of your journey, ask somebody, because everybody is so helpful while being here. And then I think another thing that I would say is there will be like travel grants that go out for conferences. And then when you attend those conferences, you have the opportunity to get scholarships. And so I would always recommend, keeping an eye out for when conferences are happening. They're also just like great networking opportunities, and they're just a good time. So.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing of your experience. So if you have a couple of minutes, we are going to open it up to questions from attendees, who are free to write any questions in the chat or in our Q&A feature. There's going to be some for Joe specifically. So for Mr. Hauser, I'll be sure to let you know when those questions are for you. And Trinity, if you have any questions specific to you, I'll let you know. Or if they're questions that you both may be able to answer, I'll open it up that as well. Okay, so let's see where we were. So from Armando, I may have missed this, but are there any scholarships once accepted that we could apply for separately, or are all scholarships allocated based on the admissions process? So I believe, Mr. Hauser, you may be able to speak to admissions specific
Yes.
scholarships.
Any SCO scholarship would be embedded with the application process. The Trinity referenced typically scholarships that are for current SEO students, like if you're a third year from Michigan, or you're with this, are communicated that way. There may be some funds. Oftentimes when we hear of an entering student letting financial aid know, the local Lions Club chapter of my area, or my local county, has awarded me with a $2,500 scholarship or something like that. We're not necessarily going to know about that. But if and when that you do, it doesn't hurt to reach out to your local areas about, the possibility. Some have funds for all types of health. Sometimes there might be a reciprocal component, like if you agree to come back to this area after you graduate, we'll pay for your tuition, or we'll put a dent into it. But anything that's SCO related would be based upon the admissions process.
Great, thank you. And then a question from Brian. Besides GPA and OAT scores, what other aspects are considered for merit-based institutional scholarships that contribute to our competitiveness, especially anything that could be mentioned or discussed on interview day? I believe, Mr. Hauser, it's another one for you.
Yeah, I'll give a perfect example. There's a reason why we do an interview. Now, don't get me wrong, GPA and OAT are usually 1A and 1B on the criticality of competitiveness. But we've actually had students with very high GPAs and OATs not get a scholarship because their interview didn't go maybe as well, or maybe there was a concern of their lack of commitment to optometry, that their amount of shadowing or their amount of firsthand experience in optometry was relatively low. Um, Time management, like how many hours did you take in undergrad? Uh, Trinity went to the University of Georgia. I know for a fact how challenging that school is. And if a student's taking 16, 17 hours at UGA, that's a challenging regimen compared to maybe if you're taking 12 hours at a local community college, so to speak. So we try to look at those aspects, but also service leadership. But going back to the interview, um, in other webinar series, maybe you've attended some of them. We talk about how our interview is a closed file, or no pun intended, a blind interview. So the interviewer will not know your GPA nor your OAT. Um, so if you excel in your interview, that stronger recommendation not only could benefit you in an admissions review, but it could make you attractive, especially for a smaller. I will make no bones about it. The higher amounts, the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 scholarships, are going to require a healthy GPA OAT. It is what it is. But you can still be a competitive applicant for scholarship. Maybe if your numbers are in the range, but maybe a little bit on the lower end of the range, if you interview very well.
Wonderful, thank you. And then a question from Arlette. I would like to ask about the scholarships awarded to Indian Americans. Does this scholarship include maintaining a good GPA and a solid academic background? And how would you go about applying for it? I believe she may be referring to the Indian Health Scholarship.
Correct. It'd be through IHS. I do believe uh, they require a 3.0 cumulative. I don't know that firsthand because, like, for the military and Indian Health Services, that transaction is totally between you and that entity. The only thing that the school gets involved with is those entities may need for our accounting office to send an invoice saying, hey, the student's tuition is $45,902. They're a second year, so they're buying their indirect ophthalmoscope and this amount of equipment this year. And here are the prices for it. They are getting the college's health insurance, and here's the price for that. But as far as eligibility and the selection for both Indian Health Services and the military is completely between the entity, the federal entity, and the student. The colleges, we have no say in who gets these. And then on top of that, the only reason we find out about them is either the student sharing that with us or um, when they contact our accounting office because they need an invoice to pay your tuition.
Wonderful, thank you. And hi, Arlette. You were at Ion Success. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. And then another question in the Q&A from Nyla. I know you mentioned that contract seats are determined by SCO, so I was wondering if you could give more insight into some of the qualifications required for those seats.
Yeah. Well, certainly residency is first and foremost. Um, the I wish I could be a little more certain, but sometimes, especially with a state like Arkansas or Louisiana or Georgia, where the number of seats is relatively low, like 5 or 6 a year to year, it's going to vary. Again, not to beleaguer the point, but last year we only accepted 5 from Arkansas, so all 5 contract seats were given to those 5 students. This year we've accepted 18 from Arkansas. We're only halfway through the process. So needless to say, this year for Arkansas was a lot more competitive than the previous year. So if I were to counsel someone from Arkansas for a future year, I don't know if it's a future year is going to be more like this year or more like 2 years ago. So there can be some volatility. When I'm counseling a student about a contract, I tend to be cautiously pessimistic, as if giving the stats of a competitive year. That way, it's a little safer than If a student's from Georgia or Arkansas or another state, like, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to be fine. And then they find out, oh, I was the 11th person selected, so I was kind of out of luck with the contract seat. But the other aspect, just to not to belabor the point as well, but getting your application in early, so that with rolling admission, we're always going to take kind of that bird in the hand adage. We're always going to take the competitive applicant that gets in their stuff early versus, um, hey, this is a good applicant, but we might get someone stronger later on, so let's hold a seat. We also tend to reward being proactive, both with contract seats and scholarships. So to answer your direct question, Ms. Cunningham and I would be happy to talk further if it's about a specific state, because sometimes it is state by state. Like for example, last couple of years, West Virginia and South Carolina, um, we've the competitiveness has been student friendly because there were more seats than we had entering students. So that means if you were accepted, you were going to get a contract seat. But for states like Louisiana, Georgia, Arkansas, sometimes that's inverted, and that's just a state by state aspect.
Wonderful, thank you. Alrighty, I don't see any other questions in the oh, there we go. All right, from Danielle. Oh, and also everyone, if anyone has any questions specifically for Trinity, please type them here. But otherwise, Trinity, if you're comfortable sharing your email, you can put it in the chat too if anyone feels more comfortable reaching out to you directly. Okay, so for Danielle, she said, I am active duty military. Would my time serving help me when it comes to those leadership or service-based scholarships?
Yes. It all depends upon um, your balance of academic. Were you like reserve? Were you or were you military then came back to college or vice versa? So when I say time management, what we like to see, and forgive me if I'm getting a little bit off topic, but time management is an important aspect. No matter how rigorous your undergraduate, I mean, Trinity went to UGA, which is a very strong, even if Trinity took 19 or 20 hours at UGA, which is very high, there would be an adjustment to her starting a doctoral program. You're kicking it in another gear, so to speak. So when we're reviewing admission and scholarship and contract seats are in this too, if along with taking 15, 16 hours while you're at a school, you are involved, whether that be military, whether that be student organizations, whether it be working, whether it be playing a collegiate sport. We like to see how well you've been able to juggle your time while still maintaining a good GPA, so to speak. So when it comes to whether it be for a contract seat or a scholarship, um, a student's outside activities, again, any of the items we just mentioned, including military. Also, if it demonstrates how well you were able to do all that and still maintain a healthy GPA, is what we're kind of looking at from a contract seat or scholarship standpoint.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's see. I'm thinking that is just about all of our questions. Well, Trinity put her, oh, here we
One
right at the
more?
last moment.
Yes.
One more question for Trinity. What was something entering SCO/going to live in Memphis that you found unexpectedly challenging when you compare it to your final perspective or thoughts of going into it? And that's just from Armando.
So for me, like I said, I lived in Minnesota. So from my perspective, like I kind of had an easy transition from living on my own to coming to Memphis and living on my own. But speaking from a lot of my friends' perspectives, a big thing for them was like okay, I've lived with my parents, and then I went to, college, and I lived in a dorm room, but I have never lived on my own. And so understanding like the process of, applying for an apartment, getting furniture, how like moving forward from there, that was something that a lot of my friends said that they had a hard time with. Um, I think something else that I found unexpectedly challenging, um, I guess while being here, I kind of realized my first semester was like we are always kind of together as a class. There's 140 of us, but like we try to do things outside of school together. And so something I found challenging was like finding separate time from my class to still enjoy some of the hobbies that I like to do. And so for me, I found something that was good for me was going to the gym, meeting people there, going to play volleyball, things of that nature. So just, you know, you and your class are going to be very close. But I would still say to find time for yourself outside, whether that be with your classmates or without your classmates. Hopefully I answered your question.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm going to do a going once, going twice for any last questions. Don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat. Alrighty, well, if you do have any questions come up or you think of anything after this webinar, Mr. Hauser's email is on the screen, and then Trinity dropped her email into the chat, so please feel free to reach out to either of them should you have any continued questions about contract seats or scholarships or general admissions advice as well. So with that brings us to the end of our webinar. We've covered a lot of information today, and I certainly hope that this has been of assistance to you as you start on your optometric journey. We will not host a webinar in December due to the holiday season, but be sure to check back in the new year for a new season of webinars. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to request more information by signing up for our inquiry form. You will receive a personal advisor and a personal brochure with information relevant to your goals and experiences. Thank you so much to Mr. Hauser and Trinity for sharing of your time and insight. We hope to see you all in the new year, but in the meantime, happy holidays and take care.
Thank you, everybody.